Keep it up, intro.
Keep going.
Wait, it's almost done. Oh, it is. There we go.
20 seconds intro. We got to fix that.
Can we shorten that up?
Jeez, Louise.
Luis.
Speaking of that, have you ever heard of better.com?
Better.com. No, tell me about it, Yasin.
Well, the CEO is in the public eye.
I love this. How many times? How many times an article about the CEO? The CEO.
So the CEO decided to announce 900 layoffs over Zoom.
The mortgage company?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
He's had to take a leave of absence. He's had to make an official apology. But the press coverage took off on this. So it became a shitstorm, a nightmare. Speaking of this, I want to say something. This is ABQ Podcast, right? I talked to somebody that was stuck in the tram yesterday. Did you hear about the person, the people that were stuck in the tram?
Did they fire the person who ran that? Because that's ridiculous.
So here's what happened. I mean, there's going to be attorneys involved in all this stuff. Mm-hmm. She was stuck in the tram with these people for 16 hours, I think.
Yeah, ridiculous amount of time. Overnight.
So
you can't go to the
freezing,
bathroom.
it's cold.
You can't go to the bathroom in the tram.
So they had 3 or 4 bottles of water that were frozen. Mm-hmm. And then they had some gummy bears or gummy worms, but there was somebody really diabetic. Yep. So they had to feed him those. So they had no food, no water, no bathroom, no nothing for 16 hours. Stuck in a tram in the fucking
floating.
Yeah, frozen.
Thousands of feet up.
Frozen.
Yeah.
It's come to find out that they waited 6 hours before they called any emergency.
Yeah, why? Who? Yeah.
There was an optics situation.
There was an optics. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what? Can we solve this first before calling somebody?
We know this is going to be a shitstorm.
Yeah.
It's going to be a better.com. So we need to, so what do we do? And so there was there had to be, this is speculation on my part, but there had to be a bunch of phone calls, mobile phone calls, and a bunch of swearing and people going back and forth.
Yep.
To figure this out, because 6 hours is a long time.
That's too long to wait.
They're like, there's people up there. There's no way to get them down. We need to rescue.
The tram, when it's frozen.
Yes.
It stops moving. There's a problem. You don't try for 6 hours on a frozen tram line to just get it to work.
I wonder if they were calling because these Switzerland companies are where all this tram stuff came from.
That's where it was made.
These motherfuckers are like excellent with this shit. They deal with this shit all the time.
Yeah. Actually, it shouldn't have frozen.
Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah. If it's a strictly optics at that point, they're like, okay,
but 6 hours.
We got 6 hours to try to figure out what we want to do before the public finds out about it.
So then there was 10 hours on top of that. So that's a story I heard. Whether it's true or not, we'll wait and see. I always like to put a caveat there. So this dude, the CEO of Better.com, has apologized, and this third-party investigation began to happen into the working environment, which revealed that the CEO's behavior was reflective of a poorly evolved culture. So what I want to talk today about is culture in business, how important it is. And then I want to start off with, because this is obviously what was happening here. I mean, when you're announcing 900 layoffs over Zoom.
You're doing mortgages.
Yeah, you're over Zoom. You're just like, hey, buddy, there's going to be 900 layoffs, guys. Without having it go through the proper, manager should have been talking about this. CEO doesn't have to talk to all 900 people, but
they got a logo they got a motto on the website that says the right mortgage could save you thousands.
Yeah.
They should have said the right culture could save you thousands.
Yes, exactly.
Got him.
Dun, dun, dun.
Got him.
So toxic cultures can stem from the bad intentions of bad leaders, but more often they are a product of behaviors that were once helpful.
Like?
Shifting external or internal environments can quickly change what is needed for continued success. And this is great. This is why I love this writer. And we love this stuff. We talk about this shit all the time on Higher Density Living.
Constantly.
In the natural world, some species, such as those in Arctic who have adapted to cold weather and depend on sea ice, are facing extinction because they cannot evolve quickly enough to survive the environmental effects of climate change. Mm-hmm. Companies can also become endangered if behaviors and cultures don't adapt to new norms.
The culture has to be a culture of adaptation.
Yes.
That's your easiest solve.
Yes.
So if you run a business here in New Mexico and you're listening to this, or you're at work and you recognize that the culture is not adaptive, either fix it as the business leader, or if you're not a business leader, if you're an employee of that business, leave it and go find one that is adaptive.
Yes.
Because this is a surefire way of running into some nasty headwinds in the future.
Yeah, because he says, however, unlike in the natural world, leaders can deliberately and intentionally shape the evolution of organizational culture to match the current context.
Yeah. So,
and Peter Drucker, we all know him. Is he dead? He's got to be.
Drucker died, didn't he?
Yeah, Peter Drucker has to have, because he was back in the 80s and shit.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't even looked it up yet.
Yeah,
he died in 2005.
Oh, okay. He says in one of his books, he says culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Bet it does. So what if your culture is adaptation?
Yes.
Talk about that. Your strategy, you can't get rid of you then. You're like this wonderful parasite that you can't get rid of, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the article talks about this, but you have to be sensitive to changes in context. That's very important. Sensitive to changes in context. Because when you're looking at, especially when it comes to leadership, what is the context, like for us with Tartle?
Yes.
So if we have contractors all around the globe,
okay,
because we're a global company,
correct,
and we encourage people to sign up at tartle.co,
right.
You can give data towards not-for-profits.
Yep.
Give your data towards not-for-profits. They can help them make money, change the world. Go to tartle.co, look at that.
Fucking sign up.
Sensitive to changes in context and able to evolve accordingly.
Correct.
So in context is as a leader, like you're the CEO, I'm the CMO of Tartle.
Mm-hmm.
As a leaders, we have to look in the context. So like for me, it's very important, and I've put this in our philosophies of marketing, is to understand that decentralized team that I have in India, that I have in the Philippines right now, two different contexts, two different types of cultures, even to where they live. There's totally different atmospheres in the way.
So then what do? You as the company
Yes.
that bridges them together must have a culture of adaptation.
Yes.
To work with people that have very well entrenched cultures. What is it that everyone can come together on?
Well, I mean, it's like we have a developer that's in Pakistan. Did he celebrate Christmas?
No, we did not.
So the whole company celebrating Christmas, that can be rude to some people.
Sure. I mean, celebrating,
But
remember Columbus
but
Day?
didn't he have a huge holiday where you just buy gifts all the time?
Yes, correct. That's
It was like
offensive
a
to me
cool- I
because
was
I
like-
hate buying gifts. Offensive
But yeah,
to me.
and it was like 7 days or something like that, a holiday. So, okay, yeah, you people are not gonna get off for Christmas and New Year's, because I as a Tartle, I want to adapt to your culture and your holidays that are important to you, not force you to take time off.
Yeah, you know, so what we've done at Tartle is we've bestowed essentially calendar responsibility for that sort of stuff to the heads of the department. The work has to get done. We all know that.
Right.
But how does it that you make it adaptive instead of just forcing it down? Well, you just give the power to each individual DAO or group. Mm-hmm. Okay, what is it you want to choose to do? Mm-hmm. You know where we have to be, but it's your choice of how you want to manage how we all get there, and you can all agree on it. Yeah, it's way more adaptive and flexible.
Yeah, and this article is really good. It talks about the inconsistencies between what's preached and what's practiced.
Okay.
So, and to look for those as a leader, to look for inconsistencies between what's preached and what's practiced. Not everything put on paper matches with what's happening in reality.
That's correct.
Peer pressure, unspoken expectations, personal opinions. I'll give you a prime example. You can get a manager out there, and he's a diehard, super liberal or super conservative, swings real hard one way or the other. Yeah. And he's living and he's breathing, he's getting memes all day long, he's doing this. He can influence his team in a horrific way, either way. You see what I'm saying? If he's putting that influence of what he's living and dying, if he's a QAnon dude, or whatever, and then he's just getting all these conspiracy theories put
unspoken
together.
Pressures on the team.
There we go. Exactly.
Correct. It's just how here. I'll tell you how we do it.
What is their reality as an employee?
Yeah.
What is their experience? Their matrix.
Yeah. So they can experience whatever they need to experience. What's important here in our culture is that you do not step on someone's free will.
No.
Free will of thought, creativity, political choice, all those things. If you can respect that, then that removes the need for putting in some sort of doctrines or scripture that you have for your culture to say that things don't act a certain way. You can't say specifically things about QAnon or whatever it might be. The whole idea here is that you're adaptive if you're respective of the free will.
Yes.
It's naturally adaptive at that point, right? But the second you start to step on that, that's an issue. So people can still reside in their cultures in India or Pakistan or Indonesia or the Philippines, right? They can still operate within their own free will, but they have to be respective of other free will. So the adaptation of that allows for better understanding between groups that may have a difference of opinion.
Yeah, and then knowing that we're all one in the sense of we're all humans, we're regardless of culture. Just because I may be ultra liberal, ultra conservative, and the person opposite me that's sitting next to me in the cubicle is totally opposite of me, he's still a human or she's still a human being.
Correct.
And that human being has rights and civil liberties that I have no, like you said, and what we believe in Tartle, I cannot go against their free will. No. I have to respect them.
Yeah.
I may disagree with them, but I can still respect them as being my coworker.
Right. Because if you start to go against it, then you start to put in a control mechanism.
Right.
That actually restricts adaptation. It restricts growth, restricts freedom of thought. And those things are debilitative to companies.
Well, I mean, it's also, but I mean, even if the leadership, because we see this, like Meta or Facebook just came out yesterday where every employee has to have a booster shot. Like not only just the vaccines, but a booster. You know, and I think majority of Facebook employees are not going to be, there's going to be no issues with that with them. You know, and they may not have an issue. Now you get a conservative company, you have these conservative companies out there. I think Southwest Airlines and a couple of these, Chick-fil-A and Black Rifle Coffee Company, we were talking about earlier. They're more on the conservative side, and they're like, hey, we don't even care if you have a vaccine, you know, where that could be a safety issue. Some people may feel of it that way, but that's your choice to work for that company or not. If you're coming in and you know their philosophy,
correct, it's
right off the bat, if that matches with you, like Patagonia.
Yeah.
Prime example. I guarantee you, I can look at their website and know they're pretty leftist.
Oh, absolutely.
And their whole number one thing is environmentalism.
Right.
So if I'm an anti-environmentalist and I'm ultra conservative, and I'm not saying those two, you can be conservative and be an environmentalist.
It's just what it is.
But if I'm that, why would I go work for Patagonia?
You wouldn't. But people do, and they think they can just form fit. It's like that culture won't work for you.
No.
You know? It's not only finding a job that aligns economically, but culturally with what you do. And so if you are a business leader or you are an employee, the culture has to come first. It absolutely has to come first. And if it's not an adaptive culture, it will destroy itself in the end. And if you inflate, your company becomes successful economically, but with a poor culture, it will never survive.
Yes, 100%.
It just won't.
Yeah, number 2 on here is identify environmental changes that warrant new behaviors.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is all evolution.
That's just evolution.
But identify environmental changes that warrant new behaviors. So let's pick an environmental change.
COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just using an easy example.
That's an easy example, yeah.
Okay, so I've identified it, COVID. What are we going to do as a company to adapt to this new situation?
Zoom, Google Meet.
Yeah, Zoom, Google Meet. Okay, I made a change. Or no, if I'm going to be rigid about it, you have to come into work. And for you to come in here, you also have to have a shot. That's not going to work. It lacks flexibility. It lacks adaptation to the current environment. So what are people going to do?
Right.
They're going to bite back. It's not going to work.
Yeah, and I'm going to use an example that we all know. Uber initially encouraged in their beginning ultra competitive culture. But then that helped them in the beginning to expand and to get above, Lyft and everybody else. But then it become under scrutiny because of the demands. Amazon's this way too, because of the demands that they have on the drivers.
Yeah.
So this competitive behavior, this huge expansion, over time became a problem. That was no longer helpful. So you have to, that's adaptation.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, I wonder how the competition became negative.
The ultra competitive culture. Look at Amazon, just razor thin
reminds me of Wall
margins.
Street.
Yes.
Just Wall Street.
Goldman Sachs.
Always cut the bottom 10%, and guys will do anything to get the position or whatever it is. Guys or girls will do anything under the sun to, move up in the chain.
Whatever it is, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
We're going to go against the SEC, whatever it may be.
We're going to create a new product that they can't,
I'm going to go pay somebody off to get information.
Yeah, no, they'll do anything under the sun. So,
yeah, and then we understand that culture, political, and financial changes that could turn beneficial habits into maladaptive ones.
Beneficial habits into maladaptive ones. Yeah, so say, for instance, even the competitive thing. You're super rigid about how it's done. You create these lines. well, that line upon expansion becomes negative because the animal, the organism has evolved in and of itself. So unless the fundamental rule of evolution supports this larger size, the way it moves, its speed, things of that nature, the certain systemic pressures, then you're not going to be in a good spot. You can't have rigid, finite ideas when things naturally have to evolve because you don't know what they will become. So you have to know that in place of it, at scale, this large thing has to be adaptive, it has to be respectful of all these other aspects of nature, human nature, what have you, so that at size, there become tangible benefits regardless of the development of this thing. Okay, so if when whales become larger, you can't keep feeding in the same area if the environment is changing, right? So say the climate is changing. The whales shift. The size of the pods change. Fundamentally still a whale at its base level. It still has these very natural things that allow it to evolve.
Right.
But it understands within those limitations, it has to shift where the resources and how it actually feeds itself internally, where it has to go. And if those aren't baked into the culture, understanding that we have to move areas, it's not going to change our identity of who we are, but we're going to shift and adapt to these outside stressors. That will create that longevity within the company. It's actually not going to have something so detrimental to it.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. I want to use Turtle as an example because I think this is really important with this. And we have it on the screen. You can't see this because we don't have video for ABQ Podcast, but we're in a studio and we have a big screen in front of us and we have Turtle's website up. Yeah. And it's share data, earn money, change your world. So if I'm going to be really rigid about that, share data, earn money, change your world, then especially with me as a CMO in my marketing, I'm going to have one set template, one set way, and I'm going to force this, like colonialism, I'm going to force this into 225 countries, and it's going to be this way or the highway. But when I look at the last of our statement that you created, change your world, change your world. Yeah. So my responsibility as a CMO is to adapt to their culture. How can I market to their world?
How do you meet them where they are?
Yes, because I need them to sign up and be and understand how important Turtle is to them.
That's the difference. You're taking upon a marketing culture of education,
yes,
and not coercion.
Yes.
And for so long, people will take the coercion route, and it never works. A business leader or somebody that's an employee, if there's coercion going on, change it or find a new job immediately.
Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, RigbyDigital.com. Make sure to subscribe and share. And go to abqpodcast.com. Get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner.